All right, so let's dive right into this deep dive today, looking at what a second Trump presidency might look like in 2024.
Okay.
And we've got this really interesting article laying out, some of the key players in his inner circle,
Mm.
who really might be pulling the strings.
Yeah, and right away, what stands out to me is that this isn't, your typical White House advisory team.
Right.
It's not seasoned politicians and policy experts. It's a much more unconventional approach.
It really does feel like we're stepping into a political thriller.
Yeah.
You half expect like the smoke-filled rooms and the secret handshakes, but the article makes a point that Trump really values loyalty and affirmation
Mm.
more than, formal roles or even experience.
That's been a theme, I think, throughout his career, hasn't it? From his business dealings to, his time on reality TV, and it looks like it could be happening again now with his political appointments.
So what do you think is the potential fallout of this approach
Mm-hmm.
to building an advisory team?
Well, I mean, imagine, individuals with very limited experience, having influence over decisions that really impact America and the world.
Right.
I mean, you could have impulsive actions or policies based on, personal biases rather than careful analysis.
Yeah, that's a little unnerving. And the article also talks about another motivation for Trump that maybe is a little alarming, and that's retribution.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost as if he's, looking to settle some scores from his previous presidency,
Right.
using his power to, right perceived wrongs.
Yeah.
And the article really zeroes in on the Department of Justice and his potential nominee, Pam Bondi.
Hmm.
So how do you see that playing out?
Well, it sounds like he's thinking about like a two-pronged approach.
Okay.
Pardons
Okay.
for himself and his allies, but then prosecutions for his enemies.
I mean, not really surprising, but give me some specifics here. Who are we talking about?
Well, on the pardon list, you've got potential self-pardons, not just for the ongoing federal cases, but also just, a shield against future prosecutions. And then, of course, you've got pardons for allies like Rudy Giuliani and Matt Gaetz, who have been battling their own legal troubles.
Okay, wow. That's a lot. And who might face prosecution?
The article names some pretty big names like Barack Obama and Joe Biden,
Wow.
Hillary Clinton, even law enforcement officials, James Comey and Andrew McCabe.
It really paints this picture of using the justice system for personal agendas.
Yeah.
What are the consequences of that?
Well, I think it really raises some serious questions about, the rule of law and public trust in the justice system.
Right.
Are we blurring the lines between, personal vendettas and impartial justice? I mean, that's a dangerous path.
It's a lot to consider now. The article also dives into some of these key figures in Trump's inner circle.
Okay.
And one name that really jumped out at me was Joe Rogan.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one.
I did not see that coming.
Yeah, so the article highlights this budding friendship between Trump and Rogan, and get this, it was actually facilitated by Elon Musk. Wow.
It seems like Trump recognizes Rogan's influence, particularly among American males, a key demographic for him.
I mean, I had no idea Rogan had that kind of influence.
Right.
I guess it makes you really rethink the power of podcasts.
Yeah.
Well, what's in it for Rogan?
Well, Rogan's always been pretty anti-establishment.
Right.
So maybe he sees this, Trump comeback as a way to further his own agenda, or, maybe he just enjoys being in the middle of the political storm.
It's definitely an interesting dynamic. Now, another familiar face is Jared Kushner. I mean, I guess not really a surprise there.
Not entirely, but what is interesting is that it looks like Kushner is going to be wielding a lot of influence behind the scenes, even without a formal White House position.
So back to brokering Middle East peace deals, is that the play here?
Not quite this time. The focus seems to be more on international business dealings.
Okay.
Specifically, dealings with sovereign wealth funds from like Qatar and the UAE, leveraging the connections that he made during the first Trump administration.
Mm.
I mean, that's where things start to get a little ethically murky, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about someone potentially profiting from foreign governments while influencing U.S. policy.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a red flag no matter what side of the political aisle you're on.
Right.
I mean, transparency and accountability are going to be really important. Yeah, it's a pretty tangled web of, relationships and potential conflicts of interest.
Right. And it all goes back to this really unconventional approach to, presidential power that Trump seems to, prefer.
Exactly. And I think that's where the real concern is.
Okay.
The article goes beyond just, describing this inner circle. It really warns about, what could happen if this is the approach.
Okay.
I mean, if you prioritize loyalty over experience, you could end up with some really far-reaching decisions that are based on bad advice or biased
It's
perspectives.
almost like he's surrounding himself with like a yes man,
Right. Yep.
just people that are going to reinforce what he already believes.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point. Throughout history, we've seen how this lack of critical feedback, it can create this echo chamber effect, and it leads to bad decisions.
So is this article basically sounding the alarm?
I think so.
Warning us about the potential dangers of this kind of leadership style.
Yeah, I think it is. It's highlighting the risks of concentrating so much power in a small group of people, especially when those people may not have the expertise or the experience to deal with these complex issues.
And then, there's this thirst for retribution.
Right.
It's not just rhetoric.
Yeah.
It seems like he's got a strategic outlet for it, and that's the Department of Justice.
Right.
So how do you think a potential Trump administration would use the DOJ differently than we've seen before?
Well, I mean, imagine a scenario where the DOJ is used to target political opponents.
Right.
Maybe even going after people who were involved in investigations or legal proceedings that were related to Trump himself. I mean, that's pretty chilling.
It does sound like something out of a political drama.
It does.
But the article suggests that it could be reality. So what impact do you think that would have on the public's trust in our justice system?
I think it would really erode that trust.
Right.
I mean, the justice system has to be perceived as fair and impartial, for it to work properly.
Mm.
And if people believe that it's being used as a tool for political vendettas, it undermines, the whole foundation of our legal system.
And what about, America standing on the global stage?
Oh, that's a good point, too. If other countries see the U.S. justice system as being manipulated, for political purposes, it weakens America's moral authority in the world.
Hmm.
It's hard to advocate for democratic values and the rule of law
Yeah.
when, those principles are being compromised at home.
So we've got this, unconventional inner circle,
Right.
the potential for, the DOJ to be used for personal agendas, these figures like Rogan and Kushner looming in the background.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process. What does all of this mean for the future of American democracy?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this article lays out a scenario that could have some pretty profound implications, but ultimately, it's up to the American people to decide what kind of future they want and to hold their leaders accountable.
This deep dive has really, shown how important it is to be an informed and engaged citizen.
Mhm.
And it really feels like we're at a turning point. This deep dive has really highlighted that the future of American democracy is not a guarantee.
No, it's not. It's something we have to actively protect. This article lays out a scenario that could really, chip away at those core principles of our democracy, but it's not inevitable. We have a choice.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about these potential backroom dealings and these whispers of power?
Well, because at the end of the day, the decisions that are made by those in power affect all of us.
Right.
They impact our economy, our security, our environment, healthcare, you name it. I mean, we can't afford to be complacent.
It's like that saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
Exactly.
We all have a responsibility to be informed and engaged citizens.
And that brings us to, that final thought-provoking question we want to leave you with.
Okay.
Considering Trump's focus on retribution and his reliance on these advisors who, may have limited experience, what kind of impact could this have on America's standing in the world?
Right. Will this approach strengthen our alliances or alienate our partners?
Yeah.
Will it promote stability or create chaos?
That's the big question. If America is seen as unpredictable or, driven by personal vendettas rather than, sound policy, it could have a ripple effect across international relations. I mean, it could embolden adversaries, weaken alliances, and, even undermine efforts to address global challenges like climate change or economic instability.
It's a lot to think about as we wrap up this deep dive. And I'm left with this feeling of concern, but also cautious optimism. Concern because of the potential risks, but optimism because I really do believe that informed citizens have the power to shape a better future.
I agree with that. The future isn't set in stone. It's shaped by the choices we make. By engaging in thoughtful discussions, holding our leaders accountable, and advocating for the values that we believe in.
Yeah.
We can help steer our democracy towards a more just and equitable future.
We encourage you to keep exploring this topic.
Yeah.
Seek out diverse perspectives and have these conversations with your friends, family, your communities. The stakes are high, and we need collective wisdom now more than ever.